I am a 35 years old female, been with my fiancé for 3 years. We both work and we both share rent and other expenses. But my fiancé is currently looking for a new job. He lost his old job 3 months ago. My family lives 30 minutes away, and although it's been difficult this year, I decided to get my brother, who has a chronic condition and struggled a lot lately and was in the hospital for a few days for anemia. The one thing he's been wanting for some time. I got him an Xbox that cost me $300. He was so happy, and I'm glad I was able to cheer him up during those times. My fiancé received a few gifts from his family, but he wasn't happy with any of them. I got him a perfume and he liked it. We were visiting my family and we had dinner with them. My fiancé looked at the Xbox I got for my brother and didn't stop talking about it. My parents noticed. I told him to stop complaining about what he got / didn't get this year. That made them uncomfortable, especially since they've been dealing with my brother's health issues and needed to relax. We got home and my fiancé took something from the closet and left for about an hour. I was asleep when he came back. In the morning, I was surprised to find my brother's Xbox in the closet. I woke him and asked him about it. Turned out he dropped me off, drove back to my family's house, and exchanged the gift his aunt gave him, a $14 fancy pen, with my brother's Xbox. He said that my brother was happy to exchange gifts. I was so mad. I told him this wasn't for him, and he basically took something that is not his. Not to mention a pen for an Xbox. That's ridiculous. He told me that maybe I shouldn't have spent $300 while trying to pay for rent. I told him as long as I can pay rent, that's not a problem, and that he needs to find a job if he thinks my money isn't enough. I called my mom and I found out that they didn't actually exchange gifts. My fiancé pressured my brother into giving him his Xbox. I was livid and so mad. I told him to take the Xbox back to my brother, but he said it was between him and my brother, but I insisted. He refused, so I ended up taking it myself. My fiancé argued when I took it and said that I was pressuring him and treating him poorly and have no respect for his feelings. I told him he was wrong to make my brother give him his gift and causing him stress and ruining his joy. I apologized to my brother and my parents, and I felt awful because of how my fiancé behaved. My fiancé isn't talking to me, saying that I have no consideration for his feelings and not understanding how he feels, not having money to buy himself the things he likes. I'm surprised because he has never done anything like this before. I get that he's struggling with finding a job, but this is not an excuse. Background about my sister. 2 years ago, my sister was killed in a car accident. She was riding with a friend to the mall. The friend's parent was driving, and teenage boy plowed through a red light while texting on his phone and hit the car my sister, Carrie, was in. Carrie was killed instantly, and her friend, June, was in a coma for 3 weeks before her parents took her off life support. When Carrie passed, I was devastated and angry and just not in a good place. Carrie and I had been extremely close. Despite a 7-year age gap between us, we enjoyed a lot of the same shows. We went to concerts together. We volunteered together, and I took it upon myself to guide Carrie like any big sister would do. Our parents were extremely busy with work most days, and Carrie and I would often cook together and do crafts when we weren't too busy with school work. Carrie wanted to be a NICU nurse when she grew up, and I helped her find a volunteer position at a local hospital to help get her gain some experience being around patients. In short, Carrie was my sister and best friend, and when she passed, I was a mess. The last craft Carrie and I made together was a set of candles. We bought the wax at a local craft store, and we both made each other a candle and decorated the jar it was in. That was the day before she was killed. At her funeral, Carrie was buried with the candle I made her. The candle Carrie made me sits on my desk next to my favorite picture of her and I together at the beach. Or it did, until last week. Background about my boyfriend. I met my boyfriend about 1.5 years ago, about 6 months after Carrie passed. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was still grieving my sister's death. But Eugene came along, and it was love at first sight. He was extremely supportive, let me cry on him when I needed to, didn't push me into getting over grieving or anything. He was extremely gentleman about everything and very, very patient. After 6 months of seeing each other pretty regularly, we made it official. Eugene came into my life at a very low point, and he has always been very respectful of sentiments I keep from my sister. never asking me to take them down, always giving me space when I needed to cry. Eugene, along with most, if not all, of my friends and family know about Carrie's candle. There was a point after she died where I would take the candle with me everywhere out of fear that someone might light it, or steal it. Or who knows what. The point is, that candle was and still is a very important part of my life and something that my sister made for me and me alone. When Eugene and I moved in together about 4 months ago, I packed away most of the reminders of my sister and put out the candle and picture on my desk. I felt that this was a huge step because when I'd lived just by myself I had pictures everywhere and a few knickknacks laying around from my sister. I wanted to make Eugene and I's home our home with just a small part of my sister there. Eugene understood and was very supportive. Last week, we had a massive winter storm that knocked out power. We didn't have power for 3+ days. The power was knocked out at Eugene and I's house while I was at work, which did not lose power. Eugene texted me that he was going to light some candles and try and get a generator, so we could have some for of power or at least be able to charge our phones / use lights / etc. Now, we have probably 30+ candles in our house. I am a huge fan of sales, and when Bath & Body Works has a candle sale, I like to stock up and get a range of scents. We have candles scattered all over our house. In the room where my desk is, there are no candles aside from the one Carrie made me. None at all, and there never has been. This room is also downstairs, where Eugene doesn't spend a lot of time. His desk is upstairs. When I arrived home from work last week, I noticed a bunch of candles burning in our living room, safely. Always monitored and not near anything that could ignite. One of these candles was the candle that Carrie had made me. I burst into tears, and when Eugene heard me crying he came out from the bedroom, where he was lighting more candles, and asked what was wrong. I was a wreck and couldn't get any words out. When he tried to calm me down, I shoved past him and locked myself in the room where my desk was and just cried. I don't know how he could be so stupid. He knew, and I thought he understood how sentimental the candle was and how much I cherished having a candle that my now deceased sister had spent time making with me just a day before she was killed. I haven't been able to speak to Eugene since it happened, Tuesday of last week. He has tried to explain why he did it, because he needed candles to be able to see, but I just can't wrap my head around it. He hadn't gotten into the large candle stash I have upstairs right by the living room where Carrie's candle was, but went downstairs, out of the way to grab the most sentimental, cherished item I have. The candle was burning most of the day while I was at work and is now melted and pretty much gone. I do still have the jar it was in, but I can't look at it without bursting into tears. Eugene says it was an accident, but I just don't believe that. He said he was getting around to lighting the candle surplus we have upstairs, but just hadn't gotten there yet. After being home 6 hours alone with no power, I am heartbroken and feel like this is a major slap in the face. I feel disrespected. I feel like he disrespected my sister. I just don't know what to do. I don't feel like I can forgive him for this. My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for so long. Days ago, I discovered that my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the recipient for the bike and returned it to the store, and kept the money for himself while my daughter was at school. The bike was at home. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after noticing the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us, since the bike was just there as a distraction and there was no need for it now since we're the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him, saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him, and he didn't pay for it, so he had no right to touch it, knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time, and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money to get him by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from tossing, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and verbally lashed out at me, saying I should have never touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to so I could repurchase the bike he took from under our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home, but he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place, and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes, then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it. But I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him, and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike. End of the story. He's called me thief and juvenile for taking money from his savings and being sneaky about it. I have a cousin by marriage, husband's cousin, that's 22 and dying of cancer. It was always her dream to marry and be a mom, and now that's not going to happen. It's hard on everyone. She has a much older fiancé, 30 years, and they had a symbolic wedding so she could have the experience. They started looking for ways to get access to a baby that she could take care of and experience some level of child care that way. But with 2020 and ethics in general, there's not a lot of ways to do that safely. My husband and I have the first and so far only children of our generation, who are 10 months and 23 months old. I had hopes that it wouldn't happen, but her parents asked me if she / they could borrow my younger baby for a few weeks. The cousin and her fiancé would basically be play acting having a baby. Her parents would also join in on pretending. There would be photo shoots and everything. This makes me really uncomfortable. It's really creepy. I cannot understate how creepy I think this is. I know that her not getting to live her dreams is sad, but I don't think this is the answer. I'm worried it will be traumatic for my baby. She's almost a year old and will, well, notice that her entire family will just vanish overnight for what will seem like forever. She's also still nursing, and they don't really seem to care about this factor. I'm really worried about problems down the road. This is setting a dangerous precedent of my child living under other guardianship. Her parents will have time to get attached, and they could try to use that for familial pressure if not legally. Her fiancé is also a wild card in that regard. I said no, and my husband's entire family is hounding us about this because her time is running out and it's time sensitive. They say we're being selfish. They say that we could use this as a free vacation and bond with our older child because I popped them out so close together. They want to compromise now by letting me come by a few times a day to bring milk. We still don't want to do this. Yesterday afternoon, we got an email from the cousin's parents offering actual dollar amounts for us to agree. We got enough from that to file a police report and at least get the threat in writing. We also had a call with my husband's parents and his siblings to basically clear the air. Apparently what they were telling people they asked for and what they were actually asking for were very different. Everyone on that call now had them blocked on social media except for mother-in-law, because of the cousin.